just in live. We got PPD Nation. We've been just chatting live with Mike Major, who is the Sergeant of Statistics. He is the Major of Mergers and Acquisition. We're putting him back on the hot seat tonight. I really want to welcome everyone. This is a later start. We're just trying to see if we can get more of a coast-to-coast experience. And so that we're testing a little later start. So for the people on the East Coast, I hope you have your second espresso shot ready, because Mike has an incredible line of ideas that I can't wait for him to actually present. So today we're going to talk about the power of measuring the whole customer experience. I'm excited for this because I'm hoping that you guys are going to come away with the gems that Mike and I were talking about when he was just giving some of his teasers about this whole session itself. Now in the chat, guys, I want you guys to put down whether your boss, if you're the clinic boss, if you're the owner, I want you to put that in the chat right now. Make sure you're hooked up to everyone on that, and just tell us where you're coming from the country here, and hopefully from Canada. If you're outside of Canada, feel free to pop that in. So in the chat, guys, so Mike can see who's on here. Let us know what's your role and where you're from. Come on, you guys. Louise Taylor, come on! You're so silent, man. You're from Calgary. We're hyped up right now. We got Fraser from Revelstoke, owner. All right, thanks, Fraser. Sarah, nice. She's awesome. Great. So we got owner right here. And we got a lot of crickets. Is it cricket a category? We got here. We got Lori Ann, clinic owner. Len, clinic owner. Louise Taylor, yes, clinic owner, Calgary, representing. That's awesome. All right, and then so in the chat right now, guys, just let us know if you actually caught Mike's first session, because we might have to do an intro. So in this, just put in yes for you made it for the first session, and let's know for. So we got no. Louise is 1 for no. Oh, we got some newbies here. All right, so it sounds like you know what. So guys, I'm actually surprised. I would have thought there was going to be like a whole repeat crowd in here. So I wanted to take an opportunity to introduce Mike Major. Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, as I've totally missed this anticipation of who's going to show up for this part of our chat. So Mike Major from ClinicDash, tell us how you came about and how this whole statistician world and psychology world has interested you to move the profession forward.
Yeah, so I graduated back in 2008, started working for a big company, and then ended up managing a bunch of clinics for them, starting to learn about patient experience and how we can refine that through the 10 clinics that I worked with, and then ended up moving on and working with some surgeons and some specialists and doing that kind of stuff, and then opened up my own clinic. When I opened up my own clinic, I didn't like a lot of the gray of clinic ownership, right? So owning a business, there should be you can make black and white happen, right? So working as a physio is gray, right? We all know working with clients, there's a lot of gray areas, but I didn't want owning a business and running a business to be as gray as it seemed to be, because I didn't have a lot of knowledge. So I looked in and did a lot of learning around it. And then I tried to take some of the stuff from developing rapport, therapeutic alliance, all that kind of stuff that I learned. And then my background from the Army, because I had been in the Army for 9 years, that helped me make it through school and pay for school for university and my master's, and take that knowledge and put it all together in process and procedures, focusing on the client, trying to make sure that we can create systems really that aren't about, it's not just about, hey, you need to come in to see us and penalize people and penalize practitioners. It's all about how can we get people to want to come back to the clinic, to feel good and look forward to coming to the clinic, and get providers to feel the same way and get the physios to feel the same way within the clinic. So create a lot of warm and fuzzies, and create a lot of warm and fuzzies with structure. Because as soon as we hear about structure, a lot of times from a healthcare provider perspective, we're thinking, oh, we're doing protocols. There's no creativity anymore, where everything's the same and it gets really boring. But you can create a lot of structure, and structure actually lets you be creative, right? So once you've created structure, you've created focused roles and responsibilities within the clinic. Now all of a sudden it's just like, I know what everybody's doing. I know our core roles and responsibility. Now I can focus on the thing that's in front of me that's most important, which is taking care of a client. And I can take all my creativity and effort and put it there, because I don't have to worry about all the other stuff. All the other stuff is taken care of and it's solid. And that's what I really work toward. And that's what That's how I brought my healthcare knowledge and my military knowledge I used to teach at the leadership school for the military as well before I transitioned into going to my master's in physio. And I took all that knowledge and put it together to create a system and create a structure where you can feel really relaxed. You can be really creative. You can focus on the right things. And I'm not worried about what's happening with the rest of the team, what's happening with each client as they're coming in the door. Are people getting taken care of? And you want to try and create all that structure so that you create a warm and fuzzy for every client coming in the door.
Amazing, man. It's really, really tactical, taking it from statistician to a psychology to in the field. That's amazing. When I think of the power of measuring the customer experience, two things come to my mind, and I'm hoping you can sort of chat about it. One being the clinicians themselves that make that sort of client experience, and the other being the front desk. Those are the two I'm thinking about. Why don't I think there's, and I'm sure the owners that are on this chat right now, on this call, can probably appreciate what I'm going to ask. Is that whenever we talk about metrics and performance, it's kind of like a double-edged sword, right? You got this shortage of physical therapists that are out there. Everyone's got a hiring sign. Not enough physical therapists are qualified, or ones that you want to hire out there. And then you've got a whole gamut of measuring tools to measuring the performance. And how do you balance helping them grow, helping them stay, and helping them perform? Like, can you give us some insight on that?
Yeah, and that's where I've dug deep into measurement, because I started my clinic with a spreadsheet. I'm just starting to build that spreadsheet, and it's grown and grown, and it grew it into ClinicDash, which is a software I've developed. And so that double-edged sword is really tough, because it comes back to a lot of things. And so Karim and I, we were talking about this before the webinar started, but I think we have to go back to when someone gets into a physio program, or they even apply to a physio program, what's their mentality? What's their personality like, right? If you tell someone, hey, you're going into a physio program, let's just say a physio school, and then once you graduate, you're going to go into private practice and you're going to get paid on a percentage, a fee split, or something like that, that person's not going to be okay with that if you tell them that before they get into the program. The majority, I think, of physios, and I don't know if everybody agrees out there, but the majority of physios that we see, if you talk to them when they first get into the program for physiotherapy, most likely they're not going to know that they're going to get paid percentage or a fee split or something there like that when they go into the clinic. So, because it doesn't match with their personality. If you look at a personality profile of someone that gets into a healthcare profession, getting paid a percentage doesn't match with that personality profile of that person. So already when we talk about measurement when they're coming out of school and going into private practice, it's just like, whoa, I'm already getting paid in a way that I'm having to learn to be okay with, right? Because technically, if we're paying them percentage or a fee split, we're paying them like a salesperson, right? That's how salespeople, it's almost like piecemeal work, right? And so we're paying them as a salesperson. It doesn't seem stable. When you look at other master's programs or other healthcare programs, that doesn't exist, right? They're not getting paid on percentage in most healthcare programs. And so the outcome for them, we're going to private practice, now is this strife between, this is my personality, I'm a helper, I want to help people, I want to get people better. And now I've got to work and get paid in a way that doesn't match that personality. So I think that's where we have to start, is that we have to talk about measurement in a meaningful way for them. Otherwise, if we take measurement and we focus measurement in a way that feels like it doesn't match to their purpose, to their ethics, to their morals, then they're already struggling with, okay, this is how I'm going to get paid in the role that I'd like to be working in. And now I'm getting measured in a way that doesn't match with my purpose and what I see myself doing. And so there's that double-edged sword of, okay, it's hard to find physios, and now we found a physio and they're going to come to work with us, but they're already having a challenge trying to understand what working on a percentage and getting paid a fee split is like. And now we're going to say, okay, now we're going to measure your performance. And so there's a lot to balance there. And I think one of the things that we need to come away with as clinic owners, and one of the things I'm trying to do across the country, is advocate for potentially looking at paying physios differently. There's lots of different options out there, and that's a different chat for a whole different day. But there's different ways to pay physios that matches their personality, that matches their psychology, and matches their purpose, so that we can talk about measurement in a way that's about what their purpose is, meaningful for them, meaningful for the clinic. The other thing is, potentially when we're hiring someone, when we hire that person and find that person, are we talking about, hey, this is how we measure performance. This is who we serve. This is the client we serve, first of all. This is how we measure our performance to make sure we're delivering for our client. And we're refining that experience every day by using what we measure to help you and mentor you and make you a better physio, and to help the clinic to make the clinic a better experience for every person coming through the door. I don't know if we have those chats, and I think we need to have those chats more and more, so that before they even start working for you, it's just like, this is how you're going to get paid, but this is how we're going to measure your performance. This is the client we treat, and this is how we refine our experience and deliver our experience. That's a big deal, I think.
Yeah. So Mike, this is I'm going to be like that little kid, that kid in the classroom right at the back is going to ask a dumb question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Is you talk about purpose and of finding, a metric or something to match their purpose. Can you elaborate on that? Because to me, that's just, it's hard to conceptualize that you could find a metric that would match their purpose. Can you elaborate?
Yeah. So you want to talk to them about their motivation. So if a physio comes out of school and they're all about, I want to do the best I can for each client coming through the door, and I want to serve them well. And that's kind of where I try and steer it, right? So the way I pay is I pay all my physios hourly. And so that comes back to another thing where we're a small private clinic. I pay everybody hourly. It's a big risk for me, but I'd rather take that risk and make sure that the onus is on me to make sure I help them develop. I lead them down a good path. I mentor them and I help them grow. But when you're looking at a measure, if I came in to interview and I know I'm getting paid on a fee split, at the end of the day, the only measure that you're measuring me by and I'm measuring myself by is how much I'm getting paid, right? Because that's what matters. Because how much I'm getting paid on a fee split that equates to the effort I put in. But now if we're talking with someone and they're worried about, I want to get someone better, I care about if my patients like me or my clients like me. Now we're talking about NPS satisfaction scores for that clinician that wants people to like them. So we're looking at satisfaction scores. We're looking at completion of care. We're looking at a fall off rate. We're looking at their handoff and what the handoff is happening. So what we do is we measure the handoff and how many visits someone books after their initial assessment with the front desk. And the front desk then comes back and says, if the handoff goes well, someone doesn't book a lot of visits, they don't get a warm and fuzzy at the front about them booking their plan out, then the front desk comes to that provider and says, hey, that didn't go so hot. I got this feeling, they kind of were wishy-washy, whatever, right? Whatever body language they were saying and whatever vibe they were giving off. And they'll come and talk to that provider. Then we have other things that we start to measure. We give them a call the next day, check in, that kind of stuff. But we measure those things that are important to them. And then when we do coaching, we talk about performance. We talk about those things because now we're feeding into what's important to them, giving them purpose, but also it's important for the clinic. And so then you have the other physios that are more about, I want to get people better. I want to help people. So then we look at, okay, how are you doing for prognostication, right? If you say it's going to take this many visits to get someone better, are you actually delivering? What's your completed care, your percentage of completed care? What's your fall off rate? Still, what's your satisfaction rate? All that stuff. So we don't talk about anything else about PVA. We don't talk about this is how much money you're bringing into the clinic, all that stuff. All the numbers we talk about equate to those things, but that's not important to them. They're not about the money. They're about, I want to get people better, or I want people to like me. So you have different conversations around that to make it meaningful for them.
Gotcha. That's awesome. I love that multifactorial approach. But if you had like a real cash flow hustler,
yeah,
going percentage, PVA, all that business, and here's how I'm going to get your Lambo in like 5 years. Is that
right.
what you're saying?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so if you have someone that comes in like that, then the conversation is different, right? But it depends on the morals and ethics and the culture within the clinic. If you want someone that's a hustler and they're going to be, potentially helping you open up a second clinic, all that kind of stuff, then that's great. But I always like to bring them back to what's important for the client. Because from a sustainability perspective, if you read any business book, so just a side story, I sat in on a great conference with one of the past CEOs of Ford, and then Hubert Joly was there. He's the past CEO of Best Buy, and he wrote a book as well. And both of those guys sat up on stage and they talked about how they changed their measurement within their companies. Now, again, different, it's not service, right? But they changed measurement in their company to be important for the person and that's doing things. And that's how they coach. So each person had their own individual metrics that were important to them that they could change and have control of every day. And what happened was the one gentleman turned Ford around and the one gentleman turned Best Buy around. And it was always focused on what's best for the client and what's best for the people working in the business that are serving the client. And so that's really important, I think. And so if you've got a hustler that's focused on money, 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 I will still try and change that conversation to, hey, we can worry about the money, but if we talk about client-focused metrics, those client focused metrics equate to money. So let's focus on the client, because when you make decisions about money, you think about money, you talk about money, it gets us down a bad path from an overall performance perspective for the whole team.
Amazing. You talked about handoff. I think as a clinician, my anxiety goes off the charts when you deliver a rock star treatment for your patient, and then you send them to the front desk.
Yeah, you go some. Yeah, you just go some. Yeah.
And guys, chat right now. How many can feel that anxiety? You can put 100% if you feel that way, unless you have rock star front desk staff. In the chat, right, guys, tell me how much anxiety you get when you've delivered a rock star treatment and you send it to the front desk. I'm just curious, before we talk about front desk, how confident the people on this call are about their front desk. So in the chat, 100% is anxiety, and then rock star means you have no worries. In the chat, guys, we got some fast typers in this chat. I can just see this exploding here. All right, Fraser says rock star. Thank you, Fraser, for opening the can here. Let's see if we got some more input here. Rock star. So gonna give it for another 10 seconds more, guys. Come on. Let's see some answers here. All right. So while the answers are coming into the chat here, we've got here, I'm confident in most of the staff. I like that. That's awesome. So that's in between. So, okay, we hand it off to the front desk.
Yeah.
Tell me how you measure front desk performance to maximize the effort just put through by the clinician, or even on the first contact. Tell me how.
Yeah, and so for the front desk, we look at a lot of different factors, because when we look at measurement, again, measurement gets a bad name because it's like, how can we always look at these magic numbers? Can we find one thing that we can measure that's going to give us all the answers? Or can we find a group of things that we can measure that's going to give us all the answers? And really, when we look at measurement, and we're talking about some of the bigger companies that I've learned from and tried to, glean some knowledge from, it's about measuring the story of every person in the clinic. So your front desk, whoever's working at the front desk, has their story for that day on how they're performing. Every provider has their story for the day on how they're performing. So we're measuring everything from the time, when someone calls the clinic, what type of call is that, right? Are they calling it to book an appointment, to cancel appointment, to reschedule appointment? If it's a new lead, did we convert it? What kind of question did they ask? So we're asking all these things, because then some of these things turn into leading indicators, some of them turn into lagging indicators. But now you're empowering your front desk with purpose. They see, I'm doing this, and this is how I'm helping influence change in the clinic. This is how I'm supporting the providers. So for the front desk, we're measuring lead conversion, and based on referral source, we're measuring reschedule rate, but we're also measuring how many appointments are booked at the initial assessment. So we do a ratio of recommended plan to book plan. Okay, so for example, say someone comes and says, you have to see me for twice a week for 8 weeks, so 16 total visits, and they get the handoff. Everything happens. There's a lot of psychology behind the handoff, but we'll go past that and say they go to the front desk, they book 8 visits, right? And so they book 50% of their plan. And we start to track that ratio, because what we notice is that if that ratio is lower than a certain percentage for a new physio versus what we kind of type the physios by junior physio, a senior physio, and kind of a middle tier physio. And we start to, over the last 8 years, we see certain ratios that happen, that if they book less than 40% for a junior physio, the likelihood that that person's going to fall off is higher. So now we've got a leading indicator for that new physio to say, hey, let's look at these people. Now the likelihood of this person of falling off is a little bit higher. We need to help that person. And then the front desk is measured on that as well, because their job is to have that conversation, book those appointments in, and also get a little more information from that person to establish a relationship, build a little bit of trust there. And so the front desk and the provider are measured on the same thing. So that creates a relationship, because they realize now they depend on each other as a team to make sure they deliver an amazing experience every time, especially at the handoff after initial assessment.
So, Mike, just for the audience here, how would you define like leading indicators? Like what, we're really good with our objective measurements with goniometers and things like that. For some of the people on this call right now, they may not be so clear about how would you define leading indicators?
Yeah, leading indicators are something that you can take action on, and they result in something else, right? So for example, for the front desk, it depends, it's context specific and different for every clinic, but for a physiotherapist, a cancellation rate would be a lagging indicator because they did something and something happened, and then there's a higher cancellation rate potentially secondary to those actions. So that's a lagging indicator. But for the front desk in a certain context, a leading indicator can be your cancellation rate because they're answering the phone and they're talking to the person on the phone and trying to make sure that that doesn't turn into a cancellation. They try and reschedule. So for the front desk, we use it as a leading indicator because it indicates that we're having troubles on the phone with some of the things that we're doing. And we're trying to track where we can learn from that, how we can change conversations to take that cancellation rate or cancel and turn it into a reschedule. See where I'm coming from there?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Other ways, yeah, and other ways to look at it for leading indicators are when we talk about how many appointments are booked at the initial assessment, right? So appointments booked at the initial assessment is a leading indicator for how someone's going to do for completing their plan of care, if they're going to fall off early, if they're not going to complete their plan of care, anything like that. So it's a leading indicator for the provider, and it's a leading indicator for the front desk as well, right? So there's a lot of really cool things that way. And then we'll talk about projections later today, and we can use some projections as leading indicators, but they're more to project performance and start to look at what you're doing later in the month and into, you can do 6 weeks, 8 weeks.
Yeah, I'm gonna get into some of these like tactical stuff, right? So after we talk about the meat of that presentation, where everyone came from, how to measure the whole customer experience. So is there, I mean, is there a method to measure the whole journey, or are there key metrics that you like, are there 3 things that you say, okay, well, this is how I measure? Take us through the journey through the mastermind of Mike Major and how he with that as a whole totalitarian.
I wish they were. So if you were at the first webinar that we did, it came down to, there's 4 key metrics that you can look at, but we have to remember that you're measuring the story, right? So the importance of the story and measuring the whole experience and measuring the story of every person, the client story, the front desk story, and the provider story, and putting those all together. Now there are key indicators as you go along that then cue you to look deeper into the story, but making sure that there's no perfect indicator. The whole group of indicators is the key. So measuring the whole experience. So what we do and what ClinicDash does as a software, it measures from the time that person calls the clinic, and they say, okay, what type of appointment if you're calling for, let's say it's a lead that's calling to book an appointment, we talk about what type of question did you ask? Because they're going to ask one of 3 questions. They're going to ask for an appointment. They're going to ask if you do a thing, right? So they're going to ask about information about your services, or they're going to ask, do you do direct billing? I have a workplace injury, motor vehicle collision. So usually it's those 3 categories. So we figure out what kind of question did they ask. Then we figure out what referral source did they come from, right? We figure out how long it's going to take us to get in. So we measure days wait until their initial assessment, because that's another indicator of, hey, this person's might try and find somewhere else if they come from a referral source that doesn't know us well, that kind of stuff, right? So we can dig really, really deep into there. Yeah. And then from there, from a provider perspective, now say we've converted that lead, we measure on the first day how many appointments they're recommending as the total plan of care, how many they booked on the first day, what the area of bodily injury is. So we're not looking at diagnosis, because we can argue about diagnosis all day long. If 3 or 4 different people see the same person, we can argue about diagnosis, but we can agree on the area. So we look at that as body area, and then as that person goes through their plan of care, we also track how many actual appointments did they come for the whole plan of care. And then we track the plan of care status. Are they still coming for care actively? Did we refer them out? Are they a fall off? Anything like that. And so now we've got that person tracked from the time they started with us to the time they've completed care or fallen off. And we also track satisfaction scores in there. And we use all that data, because now that data gives us the front desk story, the client story, and the provider story, to then help with our mentorship, help with goal setting, and help with career performance and career progressions for each of the physios. And we take all that data and we look at it in team and individual basis, and we can help it for strategies within the clinic, all that kind of stuff.
So if you, I just want to dig deep into this then, when you're measuring this, are you doing the analysis once they've completed the plan of care, or are you doing this at first visits? How take us through?
It's a running analysis at all times. So we look at trends. right? Because for physios to see trends in a physiotherapist performance, you can get an idea of a trend at 8 weeks, but usually at 3 months, closer to 6 months, you're seeing actual performance changes. So if a physio makes a big change in how they're performing, you're going to see that start to change, but where you're going to see it really have an impact on their caseload and on their practice is probably 3 to 6 months down the road of measurable change in their performance. You'll see it slowly indicating and trending that way, but measurable change will probably be at least 3 up to 6 months down the road. So there's a running analysis always happening in ClinicDash. ClinicDash is constantly calculating how everybody's doing based on the data that's real time put in there. Same thing for the front desk, but front desk, you can change performance literally within week to week. You can see performance changes based on behaviors because theirs is more immediate, right? If lead conversions are changing, if leads are changing, referral source, anything like that, you can make different decisions that way.
So if somebody was doing this, just say on their own, the use of any type of software, anything like that, if they're just doing like just
spreadsheet,
whatever, Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So are the front desks are treated exactly like part of the roster? Each person, like Jane, Louise, Elizabeth, or John, who are sitting at the front desk, they all get their scores through this, so you can get an idea of how they're performing and how they can improve. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Yeah, they'll see exactly how they're converting based on, if someone came in and walked in versus someone that sent an email versus someone that called in, and then based on referral source and based on the type of question they ask. And then you can put those all together in different combinations to see, hey, are you doing really well here? Can you help this person? Or, yeah, you're just doing great there. Keep that up. So we look at lead conversions. They'll see their reschedule rates for the front desk, all that kind of stuff. Because really, our goal is to keep our reschedule rate high, our cancellation rate low. And our front desk has a really powerful role in that. And that's where we train a lot of the psychology, right? Because if we can get down a little bit of a rabbit hole, but when someone calls to cancel an appointment, usually they're either in a rush or they're doing it just because someone told them quickly just to get it done, right? So if they're still in a rush, so they're going to whatever is the easiest answer. So as soon as someone calls to cancel an appointment, they want that up call to go as fast as possible usually, right? And if they want that call to happen as fast as possible, a lot of the answers you're going to get are answers that are emotional answers that aren't going to be what truly is the right answer for them. So then we use questions. So we test a lot of different questions, a lot of different ways to talk to people on the phone to try and just kind of change their wiring and make them stop and think for a second, right? Because from a psychological perspective, our emotional brain is now taking over when we just want to get off the phone and get that done. So we're just going to say, no, I don't need another appointment. I'll call you when I get my schedule. I'll call you in a week when I have more free time. Usually that's not going to happen. We have to follow up with them, which makes more work for everybody. But if on that phone call, we can just change our wording a little bit to make them stop and think because we've asked an unusual question in a way that they wouldn't expect. Now we're going to get a better answer, or at least an answer that we can talk through. And that's what we try and do.
So what's an unusual question?
Yeah. So a lot of times if someone calls to cancel, you're going to say, oh, okay. And then I see we've got you scheduled down the road, or, would you like to reschedule? So if you ask a yes or no question, you're going to get the worst answer, right? You're going to get the easiest answer for them, which is the worst answer for the clinic. So the question that we're currently asking is it the day or the time that doesn't work? Because all of a sudden they're calling to cancel and we say, is it the day or the time that doesn't work? So now we're showing we care because it's like, we can get you in another day or another time. You just let us know what works best for you. So a lot of times what you hear when we listen to the call and the call recording, you hear a little pause and then we can convert it. And so now our reschedule rate, instead of our reschedule rate is increased and it's at 44%. So of all the calls we're getting to cancel, 44% of them we're converting into a reschedule now, just by changing that wording.
What if they use the same analogy and say, nah, it's not the time or the date? What do you do then?
Yeah, it's not that. Yeah.
What's your follow-up?
So the follow-up is if it's not the day or the time that doesn't work, is anything else preventing you from coming to the appointment? Because if it's not the day or the time, there's something else, right? And usually if we don't get it's not that, I just want to cancel. Usually what happens is if someone just doesn't have the time, they'll say it's a family emergency, something like that, right? And then we have our fall off process that then the physio is going to call them and all that kind of stuff, which makes a little more work for us. But we haven't had a negative result yet, but we're waiting for it. We track it and talk about it all the time.
So for the clinic owners on the the call here, how many of you guys record or listen in on your front desk's client experience or their call experience? Can you, in the chat, guys, can you put in yes for you do listen, or no, you're just too busy, or you don't do it? So we got Louise's yes, Sarah's yes, listen. Okay, so it looks like there's some people are definitely listening. Now, would you recommend, Mike, that you listen to recordings, or I remember back in the day, one of my buddies, Paul Wright, would always tell me about how he would secretly sneak behind a wall and listen in on all the conversation. What have you found through all the clinics that you've been a part of has worked the best?
I like the call recording because then it gives you a time where you can be away and focus on what's important, because you're going to use that call to coach, right? And so you want to be, if you're in the moment, sometimes you get emotional about it and then it can affect other things. I'd rather be in a place. So I'll listen to it while I'm in the clinic. If I'm in earshot, I'll listen, but then I'll take it and digest it later and I'll re-listen to the call just to make sure, because you got to hear the other side of the conversation too, right? You don't know what's going on the other side of the conversation. So I want to hear both sides, because there's always two sides to the story. If someone's calling really distressed and there's an emergency, we're not going to ask, is it the day or the time that doesn't work? If someone's calling in a lot of distress and like, there's an emergency, I got to go right now, that's it. And then we're going to call and make sure that we call a day or two later just to make sure we follow up with them. And so I like to hear both sides of the story just so I can get the whole story and have a good coaching conversation with whoever we're talking with.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's something that adds for great comedy, I guess. So do you listen to like all of your staff at the same, like one after the other, or do are you singular focused and say, okay, I'm just going to listen to Elizabeth's for what's your strategy on how to manage multiple staff front desk?
Yeah, I do it by day. And so we'll listen to 3 calls a day, and 3 calls a day, it's no more than 5 to 8 minutes, right? So I'll listen to 3 calls a day, picked at random for every person, right? And then you just get it done that way.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So now what are your, so we talked about the whole journey. We talked about the key metrics of that whole section there. Which one do you think is the most powerful of those metrics that you think really pivots, where if you were only had 5 minutes to look at something, is there a trick that you could just go down the rabbit hole with? Like, is there one that you could like keep your eye on for this?
It depends on, there's not one. Yeah, there's maybe a group. So there's a group of 4 potentially. So there's, for the physios in particular, there's a group of 4 that we look at for each physio as part of their scorecard. So ClinicDash spoils me, right? I can look at the whole clinic's performance in literally 30 seconds. I just see it, and I can look at my projected performance for the month within 30 seconds. And so I get spoiled that way. But if you want to look at 4 metrics for the physios, we look at their fall off rate or the completion rate, whatever way you want to look at it, for complete or fall off for plans of care. We look at their satisfaction scores on their satisfaction surveys. We look at their actual plan to recommended plan ratio and their book plan to recommended plan ratio. Those 4 things are going to tell you, are they serving clients well? Are they delivering on what they're saying they're going to deliver to get people to their goals? And are clients happy with it? And are they completing plans of care? So it comes back to that psychology piece of, when we got in as physios and healthcare providers, we wanted to just help people. And it comes back to that root psychology of, we want to be helpers. All physios, I think 98, 99% of the physio I know are super nice people, just want to help people, are really caring. And it comes back to the root psychology of, how much did you care about that person? How well did we serve them? And if you're doing that, you're hitting it out of the park, the clinic's going to be successful, right?
That's awesome, man. That is awesome. So now, in terms of, I want to go back to, if we can, to the leading indicators and empowering the team. We talked about all these things about how to get growth. Now, can you tell me about how these leading indicators and clinic performance, like in particular, how to grow performance, how to predict performance, I'll go down that rabbit hole if we can.
Yeah. So
on your thinking cash flow, how do
yes. Yeah.
Right?
Well, and that's the thing. Anything you measure in cash, and so measuring cash is really, popular right now because as physios, a lot of us aren't great at it, right? We don't know P&L, we don't know balance sheets, we don't know. So we're starting to learn a lot of that stuff. But you can take all that data, all the financial data, and transfer it into client-specific, provider-specific measures that are more meaningful for your team, for you. You can speak in that language, and it's a great language that's meaningful for everybody across the board. And then, because when I look at the financials, I will always look at those at home by myself with my partner, whatever it may be, right? And so we keep those away from the clinic because we can speak about clients and how well we serve them, and they reflect the financials, right? So when we're looking at leading indicators, we're talking about some of the stuff that we can control on a day-to-day basis. And everybody knows in the clinic what their leading indicators are, what they can control, right? So for the front desk, lead conversion, reschedule rate, cancellation rate, they know they can control those literally the next minute, right while they're doing things. So that's a leading indicator of their performance and how the other stuff's going to go. Are they going to be getting people back on the schedule? Are they going to be getting assessments in? Are we making sure we're serving clients well over the phone? And then for the physios, their leading indicators are, how many appointments is somebody booking after the initial assessment in relation to, or as a ratio of, how many total appointments did they recommend, right? And then we're looking at, that's the biggest leading indicator for the physios. When we're looking at most of the other stuff, it's lagging indicators, but you look at a little bit of utilization in a certain context. Utilization of the schedule will give you a better indicator, as a leading indicator, will give you a better idea of how they're trending. I also like to look at schedule efficiency, and that's another indicator, but that indicator they don't have as much control of, right? Because schedule efficiency is a slightly different animal that way. It just gives me a better indicator of how they're managing their caseload. So how it's going to look 6 to 8 weeks down the road as a leading indicator. So now if I look at all those, all of a sudden now I'm going to know if those are looking good, the clinic's going to be doing well over the next period of time because everybody's leading indicators are starting to do well. They know how they have control of them. They know how to support each other and coach each other if they're having challenges in that area. So we have really focused conversations because the team knows exactly how they can affect their performance and affect the clinic's performance.
So, so how do you use these metrics to project like future performance? Like,
yes,
that's I want to see that where that cash flow goes.
Yeah, exactly. So you can project any type of numerical performance, right? So the thing that I like to project is treatments per week, assessments per week, utilization, lead conversion, and then we do a referral to RMT just because we quarterback referrals to RMT. And I like to look at projections for all of those. So if we look at just any projection, and we'll break down the math for a projection first, and then you can apply it to a bunch of different things. So for example, say we have 20 business days in a month and we're on business day number 5. Literally what you can do on every business day, you can have a running projection where you say, okay, I've got 5 business days of data. I'm going to take the average of those 5 business days, multiply it by 20 so that I have 20 business days for the month. And now I'm going to be able to project my performance. Now, for different business models, different clinics, where your sweet spot lies on when that's going to be super duper accurate is different. But for me, once I get to business day 10, so once I'm halfway through most months from a business day perspective, I know that's pretty much bang on for where my performance is going to be by the end of the month. So if I'm projecting my performance, for example, for treatments per week, let's just make the number easy. I've had 100 treatments in 5 days. So now I'm getting about 20 treatments per day times the 20 business days. So that's 400. So I'm going to get 400 treatments this month, most likely, is where I'm trending or projecting to go. So on day 5, I know I can't really trust that number yet. But by day 10, business day 10 of that month, if I'm trending right to that spot, I know I'm going to be in my sweet spot for 400 visits that month or whatever I need to be. And that informs my job on, do I need to talk to the front desk? Are lead conversions suffering? Is there something that's happening? Or do I need to talk to my marketing guy and say, hey, my leads are down or my leads are too much and I need to decrease my marketing spend? Or I need to go talk to a referral source where, you know what, thanks, you're doing a great job of sending me referrals, but right now what's going to happen is there's going to be a longer wait time for those referrals. So can we set some expectations up around that if you're sending me lots of people, that contact the clinic, but maybe have a conversation around they're probably not going to be able to get you in the same day, right? Or something around that. I wouldn't want to shoot myself in the foot that way of saying, oh, it's going to be a long wait to go see Mike at that clinic. But I'd want to make sure we set some expectations up that they're not going to say, hey, he's going to see you the same day. Because right now, with the way leads are going from a certain referral source, the clinic's not going to be able to handle that. But all of a sudden, I've got these projections where I can say, this is how my clinic's going to do by the end of the month. Do I need to ramp up our performance, keep our performance status quo, or do I need to pull some things down so that we can meet the expectations of the clients? Because if we're too high, then all of a sudden we're going to have an increase in cancellations, an increase in incompleted plans of care because people can't get in for their appointments. We can't serve people well, and my marketing isn't going to convert leads. So I'm wasting money on marketing. So now I have all these powerful things that I can do with projecting performance over a number of business days. And you can take that idea of looking at a month of 20 business days, you can do it at up to 6 weeks, up to 8 weeks. Now, the bigger period you go for, the more solid your data has to be, and you probably need a longer period of data to make sure it's that reliable. So I only do it by the month because when I've looked at it, based on changes in the time of year, that kind of stuff, it becomes less reliable as soon as I go outside of that 4 to 6 week mark. So I stick to the month, and I do a running total of 4 weeks, and I do a running total of the month.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And so in terms of like seasonal variation, do you equate that into, how do you equate that? We started this, if for those the people that got on the call early, or I was rambling about how many days off kids have in school these days and PD days, and how that, and we talked about how there's like cyclical changes in the caseload based on, just like the calendar. How do you equate things like the, Christmas season, summers, like how do you equate that into an accurate performance sort of prognosis?
Yeah. So now we've talked about how to track each person's story and measure all their performance. And we talked about projections. So we've talked about, we can measure things real time, look into the past, look into the future. So once you've done that for a period of time, you're going to learn your client's experience and how their behavior changes, right? Because you're going after a certain demographic. You know who your demographic, your client avatar is, or whatever you want to call it. And you start to learn about their behavior. So all you're measuring, your measurement is informing you on how you're learning about your team and their behavior and your clients and their behavior, so you can refine experience and really get down to the nitty gritty of how do I serve these people well and how do I serve my team well so we can do this. And so what we start to do is we start to notice different trends. So we're in a neighborhood, so the school year affects our decision making, affects visits, affects leads. And so what we start to do is a month in advance, we have conversations around school starting for the next 2 weeks. What's going to happen when school starts is people are going to have a hard time managing their schedules. So let's make sure they book ahead. Let's make sure the front desk is focusing on those conversations, and leads are going to drop at this time because we're right in a neighborhood and people are going out to school. So now we're going to ramp up our marketing a little bit to get some new people that haven't met us before. And because we have our repeat and our referrals, so repeat people coming back from another injury or word of mouth referrals, those are going to be a little bit lower because those are our neighborhood. So let's go and get some other people and start to do some different marketing strategies to bring in some newer leads. So then my clinic performance isn't doing this. I can stabilize it and strategize over the year based on client behavior because I've experimented it, I've tested it, I've learned about them, we're constantly learning about them, and we can groove it really well.
Essentially, that's a really smart way to save money. Who doesn't want to?
And maximize performance, maximize profits for the clinic, right?
So I want to go back to that sort of conversation you had about you're contacting referral sources. I think you mentioned about that. That's really true. That's a very double-edged sword here. So
totally.
In your opinion and in your experience helping so many people, whether it be clinic owners, clinicians, when you're talking to that referral source, are you actually talking to the medical offices and saying, hey, we're experiencing a high demand right now, we're going to do our best to get them in? Or like, how do you navigate that?
It comes back to psychology. So a medical office, I will never say that to, because they don't have the time of day to be able to process that in a way that makes it positive for them, and that in a way that they can communicate that well to the client, at least in Ontario. If you're outside Ontario, it might be the same as well, but a front desk or medical office, their admins and the docs don't have enough time and day to process that and create communication that's very specific and tailored to every client coming in the door. So I'm not going to say boo to them. But when I have, so for example, a personal trainer that's working with a certain team and their season's starting to ramp up, or they're in the playoffs and all of a sudden they've got a ton of injuries, or they're at the end of the season and they're just taking care of a bunch of injuries to get ready for the next season. If all of a sudden they send, 10, 20 people from their team or whatever it may be, I'm exaggerating, right? Because they've all got injuries. I'll say, thanks for so many referrals. But right now we're going to take care of all your players. We're going to prioritize them. We appreciate any other referral you have to send us, but don't tell them they're going to get in the same day. And it depends on how good of a relationship we have with that referrer and how well they are at communicating with each client around expectations. So it's a marketing thing, right? Making sure that they can have a great conversation with every referral they're going to send in when we're really jammed and booming, to make sure that they can have a meaningful conversation that they'll still contact us. We can control the conversation, but we can also manage expectations well. So I'll have those more, no healthcare provider I'll ever have those conversations with that way. It's more personal trainers, workplaces, that kind of stuff, because they understand the nuances of what that means around expectations, serving clients well, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So when you were, and this is going along the lines of like demand, you mentioned the term schedule efficiency.
Yeah.
You referring to like utilization rate, or how maybe you can operationally define that schedule efficiency for me?
Yeah, efficiency is different than utilization. Efficiency looks at just the number of appointments that are booked in a day. So let's say we've got 2 physios, each working 8 hours. One physio sees, let's see, they see 4 assessments. And for us, we see an assessment every hour and then 30-minute treatments. So they see 4 assessments and then 4 treatments. So 4 assessments are going to be 4 hours. 4 treatments are going to be 2 hours. So 6 of 8, oh man, what's the math on that? Like 72, 74%. So they're going to have a 74% utilization, right? When you look at, or 4-2, no, I'm wrong. Sorry. Yeah, I got it. Yeah. So, and then I gotta sometimes write the math down, right? Yeah. So they'll have 6 of 8 appointments taken up for that day, right? Or sorry, 6 of 8. Now I'm getting it wrong. So it's 16 because they have 16. My bad. So they have 8 hours in the day, 16 open treatment spots, but they're going to see 4 assessments plus 4 treatments. So technically their utilization is going to be 8, 12, 12 of 16. So whatever that is in a percentage of 12 of 16. So that's their utilization. But when you calculate their efficiency is going to be, they've seen 4 assessments, 4 treatments. So now it's 8 of 16. Their efficiency is 50%. See where I'm coming from there? Because I can have clinicians that have a high utilization, but their fall off rate is high, their cancellation rate is high, but their efficiency is low. And that means I'm working my butt off to make sure they get a ton of assessments in, but they're churning those assessments and not making sure they're getting people better, because they always have assessments filling their schedule, not treatments filling their schedule. Did that make sense now how I explained it? Sorry, I had to get the math in my brain because I write math. I can't, it's hard for me to imagine it. Yeah.
For sure. So you're using schedule efficiency versus utilization versus was it the fall off that you were using?
Yeah, complete fall off rate. Yeah. And then I'll look at cancellation rate for them as well. Because if you're seeing some of that trend up, so if they've got a high utilization, high fall off, right, and a high cancellation rate, then you're going to look at what's their efficiency look like. Are they taking all the assessments from everybody else then, right? Because they're just churning and churning and churning, and then you got to coach that. And so we work on that. So I'll look at those 4 things together. Will tell you a little bit of a different story, right? So we talked about the 4 main things that I'll look at, but then you delve deeper into that story of looking at efficiency and utilization. Now, I'll never talk to a physio about their efficiency, because when I talk to a physio or even anybody about efficiency, it makes them feel like a number, right? Oh, are you an efficient process? It's not about that. It's about the other stuff. Are we getting people better? How are your treatment plans going? What's your delivery like, right? Are you, have you learned something new that you're implementing that isn't going so well? What's happening there, right?
Yes, it was interesting. Just tying back to the right at the beginning of the conversation about purpose, talking about the hustler. So the hustler, using those metrics, right, to prove their performance, right, that they're rushing it because of their efficiency, utilization, all that stuff, just charts. Versus, so they're using rocket fuel to blast off versus the burner that's just burning through assessments and killing your clinic's reputation.
Yeah. So you'll see a hustler will have a high efficiency, high utilization, low cancellation rate, low fall off rate, high completion of care rate, right? When you're looking at someone that's really hitting it out of the park, and that their efficiency will bobble a little bit, because if they get at a too high, there's some amazing physios out there that have wait lists or cancellation lists, whatever you want to call it. So they're always 100% utilized, and they'll be close to like 80-90% efficient a lot of the time. But then there are some that if they get utilized too much for a period of time, they're not going to get enough assessments in if they don't balance their schedule well, or the front desk doesn't balance their schedule well. And then all of a sudden their efficiency will drop a little bit. Those assessments will get in and then it'll come back up. But their utilization will stay high no matter what, right? See where I'm coming from there?
So do you have I think we talked about this. I believe we talked about utilization rate of the sweet spot. I think you mentioned, was it 85 that you mentioned? Was that?
But for my clinic, it's 78%. So for average across everybody, each provider is different on where their sweet spot is for utilization, but on a clinic average for our 5 physios, 78% is my sweet spot for utilization. As soon as our utilization kicks up above that, then psychologically my physios are thinking, some of them are thinking they're too busy, and they start to change the treatment plans, and I can see it. They change their treatment plans, change their recommendations. And then some of it is the front desk and having difficulty getting people in, right? All that kind of stuff. So yeah.
I love that conversation that we had last time. So for the people that are just joining us for the first time, that piece, that golden nugget that you gave us last time about, yeah, if their utilization is so high, now instead of the planned care of 2 times a week, now it's like, I can't get you in, maybe come back.
I'm too busy. Yeah.
That's how it's going to be. It's really who are you really benefiting, right?
Yes. Yeah. So we see the data on that. Like the data doesn't lie, right? The data, we have gut feelings, we have emotions around how we're performing, but I've tracked that data. I've got, oh man, I think we have over 25 to 30,000 calls already tracked. And then as a total within ClinicDash, looking across everybody that's in ClinicDash, we have over 100,000 calls tracked. And so that data is solid data when you're looking at 100,000 calls of call data.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so I want to give the audience a chance to like jump on the mic. If anyone wants to jump on the mic to ask Magic Mike Major the question of the day, please, you can just raise your hand and I'll put you live on that. Now, while we're waiting for these volunteers, tell me, Mike, is there anything that you would say in terms of saving money? Like besides, like, so we talked about the marketing aspect of it. We talked about giving your referrals. Is there anything that you can do to like save money while we're running this practice based on these indicators?
Yeah, once you have, so there's a lot of things. You're going to save yourself money. You're going to save yourself just emotional stress, burnout, the feelings of imposter syndrome or the unknown, right? It's going to save you a lot of things. But if we're coming purely to saving money, saving cash, once you're measuring every person on your team and you're measuring your client's experience, you can refine that experience. You're going to see cost savings as you go along and your team starts to understand the roles. You're going to see cost savings from a time cost perspective, which is going to cost you money, right? And from a challenging conversations perspective, from a retention perspective. So imagine all of a sudden now, every person on your team has a purpose, has a role. They know how to influence and have control over that role. And it's gut feeling on how they're feeling. And they can see the numbers and how they're tracking each of their individual stories. So now that's going to help you with retention. It's going to help you with challenging conversations because everybody knows how they're performing. So we've had ClinicDash now. We've had a spreadsheet, and then ClinicDash has been live for a year. And because we coach the way we do and we look at this whole story, I don't have to search for and dig for problems. Everybody comes to me and says, hey, I'm seeing this trend. Are you seeing the same thing? What's going on? Can we work on it? So now problem solving is taken off your table. So you've created a really great experience. Your operations are streamlined, which is going to save you money. Your conversations are streamlined, all that kind of stuff. So your front desk is doing well. You're more efficient everywhere. Plus you have your projections, so you can save money on, you know exactly how many leads you need. You know exactly how many assessments you need. You know exactly what your sweet spot is for utilization. So now you can say, this is where my sweet spot is. This is what I'm going to work toward. And now I don't have to spend cash in all these places to figure that out or to market to a ton of people. I can find that sweet spot. And then when I'm ready to grow, I can take that sweet spot and build on it.
That's awesome, man. So Mike, I know that you were so excited to share a tool for us.
Yeah. Yes.
So tell me about what everyone, they're hearing this for the first time. Nobody else knows about this. What gem what treasure have you developed for us, for all these people on this webinar right now to use right after they get off this call? Because I'm going to put the link right into the chat right now. So tell us a little bit about what little gem that you've given everyone on this call.
It's a performance tool. So I have it. You can get it from the link here. You can download a free performance tool. It's a spreadsheet that I had a computer developer go into and clean up and lock down in certain areas. So you can't, it's hard to create errors in data. You can input some errors, but he's really made it so it's nice and pretty to look at. And you can use it to track your provider performance specifically. So it won't do all the things we're talking about, but it'll help you to start with the basics. It's a good starting point to just measuring provider performance and how they're doing in their treatment plans. So how they're delivering their treatment plans. We talked about how many treatments they're recommending, how many are booked at the initial assessment, how many do people actually come for, all that kind of stuff. And you can track treatment statistics. So treatments per day, cancellations per day, utilizations in there, all that kind of stuff. It'll do all that within that free tool that you can download right there. And then if you download that free tool, I'll send you 2 extra things as well. I have a PVA booster checklist. So I don't like individual metrics, but it's very popular. And I've got a lot of information that I can share. So there's a PVA booster checklist. I think there's like 25 things that you can look at to try and boost PVA. It's all about client experience things. And then there's a drop-off prevention guide. And it's a guide on how to make sure you deliver a great client experience for each of your providers, your front desk, all those things. There's a lot of tips in there on what you can do within the clinic to make sure that you're delivering the best experience possible to increase your complete plans of care for everybody coming through the door.
That's amazing, man. And I'm glad you have 59 minutes without using those three letters, PVA.
Yeah, I know. I don't like PVA. If anybody's heard me chat, I don't like PVA. It's a lagging indicator. You've got so many other things that you can work on that people can control. Yeah, I've never talked about it at the clinic. Never talked about it.
Like being on TMZ and not hearing the word Kanye, right?
Yeah,
like,
dude. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I hear you've got a newsletter going on as well.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I do have a newsletter as well. So I read a newsletter every 2 weeks. It's a 3-minute newsletter, and it's all about how you can grow your practice. So if you go to my website, clinicdash.ca, and you go to the little hamburger menu, it's called Clinic Success. It's called Clinic Success News, and it comes out every 2 weeks. It's all about client experience and how to improve your client experience, build and manage caseloads, build and manage your clinic based on refining the client experience. So the one that went out today was what's the best metric to track, right? And so a lot of it I've alluded to today. There's no best metric, but it talks about why it's so important to measure the experience. It talks about, there's a lot of other news articles or newsletters in there that are about how you can coach your front desk, the power of your front desk, the power of communication, all that kind of stuff. So it's a really good place to get 3 minutes of quick data or quick information, and something that you can translate into the clinic in real time.
Amazing. So Mike, if people want to take some of their conversations and questions, because man, you are the king of the stats and the metrics, and I'm always blown away by our conversations. I feel a little lost, but I know
sorry, dude. It's a lot because we can go deep, right? We can go real deep, or we can just stay high level, right? Yeah.
There's clarity in the clouds behind me, but I totally recognize that the deeper you get, it's like you're at the tip of the iceberg, and you're like, wow, there's so much to it. And I love how you talked about the leading and lagging indicators. And I think there's so much to the science, and I really think that you've really broken it down to real simple terms. I love the tool that you've provided to us. I put it in the chat, and I'm going to definitely make sure that the people that register this will get this as well. But for the people who are actually attending this live, you got this right now. You know that there's also that newsletter, and it's at ClinicDash.ca or .com.
CA.ca.
ClinicDash.ca, and it's right on the hamburger.
There's a hamburger menu. Sorry, just go to the top menu, and it's a drop-down menu on the top right corner, and you'll see Clinic Success News. Yeah.
I don't know if I was hungry. I just heard hamburger.
Yeah, dude.
That's awesome. So, Mike, there's one last thing you want to leave our audience right now as we're closing the hour. Tell us what that would be.
And I think the biggest thing is that performance measurement seems daunting. But getting started is the hardest part. Once you get started, it gets really exciting because you can motivate your team. You can teach your team how they're connected to each other, how they depend on each other. And it's not about the metrics. It's about the story that you're creating for your team and for your clients, and use it as an experiment where you get results and you can refine how your clinic's running, refine how your client experience looks, and refine your provider experience, your physio's experience. So you're helping them build their careers. So getting started is the first step, and it's the hardest step. But once you get started, there's some really cool things that you can do with it.
It's amazing, Mike. I really want to thank you for simplifying things, creating this narrative where there's a psychology behind the money, and really creating that narrative to elevate the experience of clients that are attracted to our practice and clients that are going to use us for a lifetime. And so I really want to thank you for educating us. I want to thank everyone who joined us, and I want everyone to go into that chat. I left the link in there. I really want you guys to utilize this form. And Mike, do you have an email or something like that, or anywhere where people can reach you at?
Yeah, you can reach me at mmajor@clinicdash.ca, and I'll respond.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then, so guys, thanks so much for joining us. We made it just in the hour, and I really appreciate everyone making this time from coast to coast. And we're going to be signing out. Thanks, Mike, and PPD Nation, Physio Cream signing off, and we'll chat soon. Take care, guys.
Thank you. Yeah.